My parents said they couldn't help with my surgery, then bought my sister a luxury car for being so easy to raise. I didn't argue. But I also haven't spoken to them since the hospital discharge. Now they're wondering why. I'm 28, and my sister Emma is 25. Growing up, Emma was always the golden child. She was naturally athletic, got decent grades without trying, and never caused any drama. I, on the other hand, was the difficult one. I had severe anxiety, struggled with school despite being smart, and apparently asked too many questions. My parents, David and Linda, made it clear early on which daughter was easier to love. The story really begins 2 years ago when I started experiencing severe abdominal pain. At first, my mom Linda dismissed it as stress from my job as a graphic designer. "You're always so worked up about everything, Sarah. Just relax and it'll go away." But the pain kept getting worse. I was losing weight rapidly, couldn't keep food down, and was missing work regularly. After months of pushing, I finally got my parents to take my health concerns seriously when I collapsed at Emma's birthday dinner. The ambulance ride was humiliating, but at least it got me the medical attention I desperately needed. After weeks of tests, scans, and specialists, I was diagnosed with severe gastroparesis with pyloric stenosis. Essentially, my stomach muscles had stopped working properly and the opening to my small intestine had narrowed significantly. The only real solution was surgery, but not just any surgery. This was a complex procedure called a pyloroplasty with gastric stimulator implant that would cost around $120,000 even with my insurance covering most of it. When I told my parents about the diagnosis and the surgery, their reaction was underwhelming. My dad David just nodded and said, "Well, that's what insurance is for." My mom asked if I'd gotten a second opinion, as if I hadn't already been through months of medical consultations. But when I explained that even with insurance, I'd still owe about $18,000 out of pocket due to my deductible and the 20% co-insurance on the procedure, the room went quiet. "That's a lot of money, Sarah," my mom said slowly. "Are you sure this surgery is absolutely necessary? Couldn't you try managing it with diet and medication first?" I explained that I'd already tried everything. The specialists were clear that without this surgery, my condition would continue to deteriorate. I might need emergency surgery later, which would be even more risky and expensive. I wasn't asking them to pay for the whole thing, just help me with a portion my insurance wouldn't cover. I had some savings, but nowhere near enough. My dad, who owns a successful accounting firm, and my mom, who manages a high-end boutique, exchanged one of those looks that married couples do when they're having an entire conversation without words. Finally, my dad cleared his throat. "Sarah, we'd love to help, but money's tight right now. The business has had some unexpected expenses, and your mother's store is going through a rough patch. We just don't have $18,000 sitting around to throw at medical bills." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, but I nodded and said I understood. What else could I do? I started researching medical loans, payment plans, and even considered crowdfunding. The surgery was scheduled for 6 weeks out, and I was determined to find a way to pay for it. Those 6 weeks were hell. My condition was getting worse daily. I could barely eat without severe pain, I'd lost 20 pounds, and I was so weak I could barely work. My parents checked in occasionally, asking how I was feeling, but they seemed more concerned about whether I'd figured out the money situation than my actual health. 3 weeks before my surgery, I got a call from Emma. She was practically bouncing with excitement. "Sarah, you'll never guess what Mom and Dad did. They surprised me with the most amazing early birthday present." My heart sank, but I played along. "Oh yeah? What did they get you?" "A BMW. A brand new BMW X3. Can you believe it? It's white with tan leather interior and all the upgrades. They said it was a reward for being so easy to raise and for getting that promotion at the marketing firm. They wanted to celebrate my success." I sat there in stunned silence, holding the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. A BMW X3. I'd looked at cars recently since mine was on its last legs, and I knew that model with all the upgrades started around $52,000 new. "Sarah? Are you there?" "Yeah," I managed to croak out. That's amazing, Emma. Congratulations." "Thanks. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything like this. I just mentioned that my old car was having problems and next thing I know, they're taking me to the dealership. They paid cash, can you believe it?" Dad said business has been really good lately. Business has been really good lately. The words echoed in my head long after Emma hung up. Just 4 weeks earlier, my parents had told me they couldn't help with my surgery because money was tight and business was struggling. I didn't call them. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream or cry or demand an explanation. I just sat there in my tiny apartment, surrounded by medical bills and loan applications, processing the fact that my parents had chosen to spend $52,000 on a luxury car for my sister rather than help me with $18,000 for life-saving surgery. The next 2 weeks were a blur of desperate phone calls and applications. I called every medical financing company I could find, most of which wanted interest rates that would have doubled my debt within a few years. I applied for personal loans, knowing my credit was good but not excellent. I even looked into those predatory payday loan places before my friend Jessica physically stopped me from walking into one. "Sarah, you're not thinking clearly," she said, grabbing my arm outside the quick cash storefront. "These places will destroy you financially. There has to be another way." But what other way was there? My surgery was in 2 weeks, and I was still $12,000 short even after maxing out my credit cards and getting approved for a medical loan that would cost me $400 a month for the next 4 years. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I researched crowdfunding for medical expenses. The idea of putting my private medical situation on the internet for strangers to judge felt humiliating, but I was running out of options. I spent hours crafting a campaign, explaining my condition, the necessity of the surgery, and my financial situation. I uploaded it at 2 a.m. and immediately felt sick with shame. Within hours, my coworkers had found it. Within a day, my boss Michael had called me into his office. I thought I was getting fired for airing my personal problems online, but instead, he closed the door and sat down across from me. "Sarah, why didn't you come to me sooner?" he asked. "I've been watching you struggle for weeks, getting sicker and sicker, and I had no idea it was this serious." I started crying right there in his office. I didn't want to make it anyone else's problem. "It's not your responsibility to stop," he said firmly. "You've been with this company for 4 years. You're one of our most talented designers, and more than that, you're a good person. The company has an emergency assistance fund for situations exactly like this. I'm authorizing a $12,000 advance against your future earnings, no interest, payments deducted from your salary over 3 years." I sobbed. Actually sobbed in my boss's office, because a relative stranger was showing me more care and consideration than my own parents had. But the financial stress was only part of what made those weeks hellish. The other part was watching my parents act like everything was normal. My dad called twice to ask about my situation, as if my life-threatening medical condition was some minor inconvenience I'd created. My mom sent me articles about natural healing and suggested I try yoga and meditation instead of surgery. Meanwhile, Emma was posting photos of her BMW on social media every few days for the first month. Pictures of her washing it, pictures of her friends admiring it, pictures of her taking weekend trips. Each post felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I couldn't stop looking. She'd caption them with things like "Still can't believe how lucky I am." #blessed, #grateful, #best parents ever. The worst part was the comments from family, friends, and relatives. "Your parents are so generous. You're such a lucky girl. What a beautiful surprise." People who had known me my entire life were celebrating my sister's good fortune while I was literally fighting for my health in silence. 1 week before my surgery, my Aunt Carol called. She was my mom's sister and had always been the more observant one in the family. "Sarah, honey, I saw Emma's car posts online. It's beautiful, but I have to ask. How are you doing? Last time we talked, you mentioned having some health problems." I almost brushed it off with my usual "I'm fine," but something in her voice made me pause. "Actually, Aunt Carol, I'm having surgery on Friday. It's been a difficult time." "Surgery? What kind of surgery? Why didn't anyone tell me?" I gave her the basic overview of my condition and the procedure, and there was a long silence on the other end. "Sarah, please tell me your parents are helping with this. Medical bills can be overwhelming." They said money was tight right now." Another long pause. "Money was tight? Sarah, your father just told me 2 weeks ago that the accounting firm is having its most profitable year ever. He was bragging about landing 3 major corporate clients." My stomach dropped. He said business was struggling when I asked for help. Struggling? "Honey, they just spent more on Emma's car than most people make in a year. And your mother was showing me pictures of the new kitchen renovation they're planning for next spring." "Kitchen renovation?" I hung up the phone feeling nauseous, and it wasn't for my medical condition. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Aunt Carol's words, about my father's lie, about the kitchen renovation I hadn't heard about. I started adding up all the things my parents had spent money on just in the past year that I knew about: Emma's car, obviously, but also the new deck they'd built, the vacation to Europe they'd taken without inviting me, the expensive anniversary party they'd thrown for themselves. I grabbed a calculator and started estimating. Even being conservative, they'd spent at least $75,000 on non-essential items in the past 12 months. But they couldn't spare $18,000 to help me with surgery. The surgery went ahead as scheduled. I ended up taking out a medical loan with a brutal interest rate, borrowed money from my credit cards, and even accepted help from my boss, who insisted on advancing me against future work. The procedure itself was successful, thank God, but the recovery was lonely and painful. My parents visited exactly once, on day 2 of my hospital stay. They brought flowers, cheap ones from the grocery store, not even arranged, and asked how I was feeling. They stayed for maybe 30 minutes, during which my mom spent most of the time scrolling through her phone and my dad kept checking his watch. "We can't stay long," my mom said. "We promised Emma we'd help her set up her new car insurance policy, and then we're taking her to dinner to celebrate her getting settled in with a BMW. They mentioned Emma's new car 3 separate times during their brief visit, how happy she was, how proud they were of her recent promotion, how the car was already making her commute so much better. It's such a relief to see one of our daughters thriving and not having to worry about her, my dad said as they were leaving. Emma just makes everything so easy for us. I just smiled and nodded, even though those words hit me like a physical blow. The next day, Emma came to visit alone. She brought actual good flowers, homemade cookies, and stayed for 3 hours. But even her visit was tainted by the BMW talk. "Sarah, I feel so spoiled," she said, settling into the uncomfortable hospital chair. "Mom and Dad have been so amazing about the car. They even paid for the extended warranty and the premium insurance package. Dad said he wanted to make sure I never had to worry about anything going wrong with it. Never had to worry about anything going wrong." Meanwhile, I was lying in a hospital bed, recovering from major surgery I'd had to finance myself because they couldn't help me with something that was actually going wrong. "That's really nice of them," I managed to say. I keep telling them they didn't need to do all this, but Mom said I deserved it for being such a good daughter and never giving them any trouble. She said it was their way of showing appreciation for how easy I've always been to raise. Easy to raise. There it was again, that phrase that apparently justified everything. Emma continued chatting about the car's features, the compliments she'd been getting, the road trip she was planning to take with her friends. With each detail, I felt myself retreating further into myself, building walls that I didn't even realize would become permanent. During my recovery, I had a lot of time to think. Too much time, really. Lying in that hospital bed, and then later on my couch for weeks afterward, I replayed every moment of my childhood. Every time Emma got the bigger room when we moved houses, while I was told to be grateful for what I had. Every time she got the newer, more expensive clothes while I got hand-me-downs from cousins, because you're hard on your clothes anyway, Sarah. Every time she got the more expensive birthday presents while I was told that it's not about the money, it's about the thought. But it was about the money, wasn't it? It was always about the money, and who they thought deserved to have it spent on them. I remembered being 12 and desperately wanting to take piano lessons like Emma was taking dance classes. When I asked, my dad said lessons were too expensive and I should try learning from YouTube videos instead. But Emma's dance classes, which cost twice as much as piano lessons, continued without question. I remember being 16 and asking for help with a car so I could get a part-time job. They said I needed to save up and buy my own car to build character. Emma got a car for her 16th birthday 2 years later because she needs reliable transportation for all her activities. I remember being 22 and asking for help with student loan payments when I was struggling to find work after college. They said I needed to learn to manage my finances better and offered to pay for a financial planning class instead. But when Emma needed help with a security deposit on her first apartment, they handed over the money without question. Every memory I examined revealed the same pattern. Emma's needs were important and worthy of immediate attention and financial support. Mine were character-building opportunities or signs that I needed to be more responsible, more grateful, more self-sufficient. But this wasn't about childhood favoritism anymore. This was about my life, my health, my future. And they'd made their choice crystal clear. The worst part of recovery wasn't the physical pain or even the financial stress of the mounting medical bills. It was the complete silence from my parents after that one hospital visit. No phone calls checking on my healing. No offers to bring groceries or help with household tasks I couldn't manage. No acknowledgement that I was going through something difficult and might need support. But Emma got daily check-ins about how she was enjoying the car. I know this because Emma told me during one of her visits. Mom calls every morning to ask how I'm liking the BMW, she said, completely oblivious to how that sounded to someone recovering from surgery alone. She's so excited about it. She keeps asking for pictures and wanting to know about every little feature I discover. Meanwhile, I was struggling to open soup cans and do laundry, and my parents' primary concern seemed to be whether I was healing fast enough to not be a burden on anyone. 3 weeks into my recovery, my mom finally called. Not to check on my health, but to ask if I was well enough to attend a family barbecue they were throwing to show off Emma's car to the extended family. We're having everyone over on Saturday, she said cheerfully. Emma wants to show Aunt Carol and Uncle Jim the BMW, and your dad is planning to grill. You should come if you're feeling up to it. A party. They were throwing a party for Emma's car. A car that cost more than my surgery, which they couldn't afford to help with. I'm still recovering, Mom. I don't think I'll be up for it. Oh, come on, Sarah. You've been home for 3 weeks. Surely you can manage a few hours with family. Besides, everyone's been asking about you. Everyone's been asking about me, but no one had actually called or visited except Emma. I really don't think I should be around that many people yet. My immune system is still compromised. Well, if you change your mind, we'll be starting around 2 p.m. It would mean a lot to Emma to have you there. It would mean a lot to Emma. Not to her, not to Dad, but to Emma. As if the only reason I should attend was to make Emma happy, not because they actually wanted to see me or check on my recovery. I didn't go to the barbecue. Instead, I spent that Saturday organizing all my medical bills and loan documents, trying to figure out exactly how much this surgery was going to cost me over the next 5 years. The number was staggering. Even with my boss's help and the medical financing, I was looking at paying nearly $50,000 when all was said and done, thanks to interest and the money I'd had to put on credit cards. $50,000? More than Emma's car. For a surgery I'd needed to save my life. That night, Emma called to tell me about the party. How much fun everyone had, how impressed everyone was with the car, how proud our parents looked showing it off. I wish you'd been there, Sarah. Aunt Carol kept asking about you and your surgery. I didn't really know what to tell her. What did you tell her? Just that you were recovering well and didn't feel up to socializing yet. But honestly, some people seemed surprised that Mom and Dad weren't helping you more with everything. Aunt Carol made some comment about how families should take care of each other during medical emergencies. Aunt Carol? Of course she would be the one to notice what my parents hadn't. What did Mom and Dad say to that? Dad got kind of defensive and said that you were an independent adult who preferred to handle things yourself. Mom changed the subject pretty quickly after that. Independent adult who preferred to handle things herself. As if I'd chosen to struggle with medical bills rather than simply being denied help. That conversation was when I realized I was done. Not just frustrated or hurt, but actually done with the whole dynamic. I was tired of being the daughter who was expected to handle everything alone while Emma was celebrated for accepting help. Tired of being told I was difficult for having needs while Emma was praised for being easy. Tired of pretending that this treatment was normal or acceptable. I stopped calling them. When they called me, I kept conversations short and surface level. I'm fine, recovery's going well, thanks for asking. I stopped attending family dinners. When they invited me to Emma's actual birthday party, I politely declined, citing ongoing recovery needs. When they asked if I wanted to see Emma's new car in person, I said I was busy. I smiled and nodded and said all the right things. During my recovery, I had a lot of time to think. Lying in that hospital bed, and then later on my couch for weeks afterward, I replayed every moment of my childhood. Every time Emma got the bigger room, the newer clothes, the more expensive birthday presents. Every time my accomplishments were brushed aside while hers were celebrated. Every time I was told I was too sensitive or too needy when I asked for the same attention they lavished on her. But this wasn't about childhood favoritism anymore. This was about my life, my health, my future. And they'd made their choice crystal clear. I stopped calling them. When they called me, I kept conversations short and surface level. I'm fine, recovery's going well, thanks for asking. I stopped attending family dinners. When they invited me to Emma's actual birthday party, I politely declined, citing ongoing recovery needs. When they asked if I wanted to see Emma's new car in person, I said I was busy. At first, they didn't seem to notice. Or maybe they were relieved that I wasn't being dramatic about everything. But as weeks turned into months, and I continued to be unavailable for family gatherings, they started asking more pointed questions. Sarah, you seem distant lately. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Mom. Just focusing on getting back to full health. You missed Emma's graduation celebration last month. I had a work deadline. And Thanksgiving? I made plans with friends. This wasn't entirely untrue. I had made plans with friends, because I'd finally started building a chosen family of people who actually cared about my well-being. My friend Jessica, who brought me groceries during recovery. My coworker Mark, who covered my shifts when I was too sick to work. My neighbor Mrs. Chen, who checked on me daily and brought homemade soup. Christmas came and went. I sent polite cards but didn't attend dinner. My parents started leaving longer voicemails, asking if I was angry about something, if they'd done something wrong. My mom even showed up at my apartment once, but I wasn't home. I'd been at physical therapy. The breaking point came in February, about 8 months after my surgery. My dad called while I was at work. Sarah, we need to talk. Your mother is worried sick about you. You've been shutting us out for months, and we don't understand why. If we did something to upset you, just tell us so we can fix it. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, Dad, I'm at work. Can we talk about this later? No, Sarah. We can't keep doing this dance. Come to dinner Sunday. We're having a family meeting. A family meeting. Like I was a problem to be solved rather than a daughter who'd been deeply hurt. Sunday came, and I actually showed up. Maybe part of me hoped they'd figured it out on their own. Maybe I wanted to give them one last chance to acknowledge what they'd done. I walked into my childhood home to find Emma's BMW parked prominently in the driveway. She was there too, looking uncomfortable but trying to lighten the mood. My parents sat me down in the living room like they were staging an intervention. Sarah, my mom started, her voice gentle but frustrated, we love you so much and it breaks our hearts that you've been pushing us away. We've tried to give you space to work through whatever this is, but enough is enough. Talk to us. I looked around the room at these 3 people who supposedly loved me. Emma, clutching her BMW key fob nervously. My parents, looking genuinely confused about why I might be upset. You really don't know? I asked quietly. Know what? My dad replied. Sarah, if this is about the surgery, we told you money was tight. We would have helped if we could, but you bought Emma a $52,000 car 3 weeks later. The silence was deafening. Emma's face went pale. My mom's mouth opened and closed without making sound. My dad looked like I'd slapped him. That's different, my mom finally stammered. Emma's car was a celebration of her achievements. And it wasn't $45,000, where did you get that number? I looked it up, Mom. BMW X3, loaded with options, paid for in cash. Meanwhile, I was denied help for life-saving surgery because money was tight. Emma spoke up for the first time. Sarah, I didn't know they'd said no to helping you. I never would have accepted the car if. This isn't about you, Emma, I said, keeping my voice level. This is about them making a choice about whose needs mattered more. My dad's face was getting red, the way it did when he felt cornered. Sarah, you're being unreasonable. Emma's situation and yours are completely different. The car was a planned purchase, a celebration. Your surgery was an unexpected expense. An unexpected expense, I repeated. My health was an unexpected expense, but Emma's luxury car was a planned celebration. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Do I? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you had $52,000 available exactly when you told me you couldn't help with $18,000 for surgery. So either you lied to me then, or you're lying now about your priorities. The room erupted. My mom started crying, saying I was twisting everything and being cruel. My dad got defensive, listing all the ways they'd helped me over the years, as if that somehow justified abandoning me when I needed them most. Emma tried to play peacemaker, offering to sell the car and give me the money, which only made everyone more upset. But I just sat there, calm for the first time in months, watching them scramble to justify their choices. You know what the worst part is? I said when they finally stopped yelling. It's not even really about the money. I would have found a way to pay for the surgery regardless. It's about what you chose to prioritize. Emma gets rewarded for being easy to raise with a luxury car. I get told that my medical needs aren't worth helping with because money's tight. We never said your medical needs weren't worth, my mom started. You didn't have to say it, Mom. You showed it. I stood up to leave, and my dad blocked my path. Sarah, you're not leaving like this. We're going to work this out as a family. No, Dad. We're not. Because I finally understand that to you, family means Emma gets the benefit of the doubt, the celebrations, and the financial support. I get lectures about being too sensitive and told to figure things out on my own. That's not true, isn't it? When's the last time you celebrated one of my accomplishments? When's the last time you helped me with anything significant without making me feel guilty about asking? When's the last time you chose me over Emma for anything? They couldn't answer because we all knew the truth. I walked out that day and haven't been back since. That was 6 months ago. The aftermath has been both harder and easier than I expected. Harder because losing your family, even a dysfunctional one, is still a loss. I've had to grieve not just the relationship I had with my parents, but the relationship I'd always hoped we might have someday. But it's also been easier because I'm no longer constantly disappointed by people who were never going to prioritize my well-being. I've stopped waiting for their approval, their support, or their love to be offered freely instead of as a reward for being easy. My health has improved dramatically since the surgery. I'm back to work full-time. I've been dating someone wonderful who actually cares about my feelings, and I've been saving money for the first time in years since I'm not constantly trying to prove myself worthy of my parents' attention. Emma has reached out several times. She even offered to sell the car and give me the money, but I declined. This was never about wanting her to have less. It was about wanting my parents to see me as worthy of more. She didn't create this situation, and she shouldn't have to fix it. My parents have tried various approaches. First came the angry voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart over money and being manipulative. Then came the guilty ones about how they'd made mistakes but I needed to forgive them and move on. Recently, they've been sending cards with newspaper clippings about family estrangement, presumably hoping I'll realize I'm being unreasonable. Last month, my mom showed up at my workplace. She looked older, more tired than I remembered. She begged me to come home for Christmas, said the family wasn't complete without me, said they'd learned their lesson and would do better. I told her gently but firmly that I wasn't ready for that conversation, and she needed to respect my boundaries. She left crying, and I felt terrible for about 10 minutes before remembering that my boundaries had never been respected before, so this was actually progress. The hardest part is that I don't think they still really understand what they did wrong. In their minds, they made a reasonable financial decision and I'm punishing them disproportionately for it. They see Emma's car as a separate issue from my surgery, because one was a want and one was a need, and apparently parents are only obligated to help with needs. But that's exactly the problem. They've never seen my needs as important as Emma's wants. The hardest part is that I don't think they still really understand what they did wrong. In their minds, they made a reasonable financial decision and I'm punishing them disproportionately for it. They see Emma's car as a separate issue from my surgery, because one was a want and one was a need, and apparently parents are only obligated to help with needs. But that's exactly the problem. They've never seen my needs as important as Emma's wants. What really drives this home is something that happened about 3 months into our estrangement. I ran into my mom's friend Janet at the grocery store, and she immediately started gushing about how wonderful my parents are. "Your mom showed me pictures of Emma's beautiful new car," Janet said, beaming. She said it was a surprise gift to celebrate Emma's promotion. "Your parents are so generous." They said Emma has always been such an easy daughter, never asking for anything, so when she mentioned needing reliable transportation, they just had to do something special for her. Never asking for anything. The phrase hit me like a physical blow because it was so fundamentally untrue, but it revealed how my parents had rewritten the narrative. Emma had asked for things constantly throughout our childhood and adulthood, she just asked for things they were happy to give. New clothes, dance lessons, help with rent, a car. Her asks aligned with what they wanted to provide, so in their minds, she never asked for anything. Meanwhile, I had asked for help with anxiety therapy as a teenager and been told to just think positive thoughts. I had asked for help with college expenses and been told I needed to learn the value of hard work. I had asked for support during a difficult breakup and been told I was too emotional and needed to toughen up. My asks were inconvenient, uncomfortable, or challenged their worldview, so I became the difficult daughter who always wanted something. "That's really nice," I managed to tell Janet, but inside I was seething. Not just at my parents, but at the entire narrative they'd constructed around our family dynamics. The conversation with Janet made me realize something important: my parents weren't just favoring Emma in private. They were actively promoting a version of our family story to their friends and extended family where Emma was the perfect daughter who deserved rewards, and I was. What? Absent from the story entirely? I started paying attention to how they talked about us to others, and the pattern became impossible to ignore. Emma's achievements were shared widely and celebrated publicly. Her promotion, her new apartment, her relationship milestones, all of it was Facebook-worthy news that my parents proudly shared. But my achievements? My successful projects at work, my recovery from surgery, my growing independence, these were either not mentioned at all or described in neutral, almost apologetic terms. When my cousin asked my dad about my health at a family gathering I didn't attend, he apparently said, "Oh, Sarah's fine. She had some surgery, but you know how she is, she likes to handle everything herself." As if my handling things alone was a personality quirk rather than a necessity born from their refusal to help. This reframing of my independence as a choice rather than a consequence of their neglect was perhaps the most infuriating part of the whole situation. They had trained me from childhood to not ask for help by consistently denying it or making me feel guilty for needing it. Then they pointed to my self-reliance as evidence that I didn't need help in the first place. My therapist says I'm processing this in a healthy way, that setting boundaries with family members who've consistently shown you that you're not a priority is not just reasonable but necessary for mental health. She's helped me understand that I wasn't actually asking for them to pay for my surgery so much as I was asking them to show that my life and well-being mattered to them as much as Emma's happiness. They failed that test spectacularly. I know some people reading this will think I'm being petty or vindictive. That I should forgive them and move on because they're family. But here's the thing, forgiveness doesn't require me to accept continued poor treatment. And moving on doesn't mean pretending this never happened. My parents made a choice. They looked at their 2 daughters, one who needed help with a medical emergency and one who wanted a luxury car, and they chose to prioritize the luxury car. They can live with that choice, but they can't force me to pretend it didn't reveal something fundamental about how they value me. Maybe someday we'll have a relationship again. Maybe they'll genuinely understand why their actions were so hurtful and work to rebuild trust. Maybe Emma and I will grow closer without our parents' favoritism poisoning our relationship. Or maybe not. Maybe this is how our family story ends, with me finally choosing to value myself the way I always wished they would. Either way, I'm okay. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely okay with disappointing them, because I'm no longer willing to disappoint myself by accepting scraps of affection from people who should love me unconditionally. I survived the surgery, I'm thriving in my recovery, and I've learned that chosen family can be just as meaningful as blood family. Sometimes more so. They're wondering why I haven't spoken to them since the hospital discharge? It's simple, they taught me that actions speak louder than words, and their actions told me everything I needed to know about my place in their priorities. I finally learned the lesson they've been teaching me my whole life. I just don't think they expected me to actually apply it. Update: a lot of people have been asking about Emma and whether she's reached out since my original post. She has, and we've actually been slowly rebuilding our relationship. She drove that BMW exactly once after our family confrontation, realized she couldn't enjoy it knowing what it represented, and ended up trading it in for a modest used car, donating the difference to a medical charity. She didn't tell our parents beforehand. She also started therapy and has been working through her own guilt about being the favored child. It turns out that golden child syndrome comes with its own trauma, and she'd been struggling with feeling like she had to be perfect to maintain our parents' love. We have coffee every few weeks now, And for the first time in our lives, we're building a relationship based on who we actually are rather than our roles in our parents' dysfunction. As for our parents, they're still sending holiday cards and birthday gifts as if nothing happened. I donate the gifts to charity and throw away the cards. They've stopped trying to force direct contact, which I suppose is progress. My therapist says healing isn't about them acknowledging what they did wrong anymore. It's about me continuing to build a life where I'm valued and respected. Some days that feels revolutionary, considering where I came from. The surgery site has healed completely, and I'm healthier now than I've been in years. Turns out when you're not constantly stressed about family drama and feeling undervalued, your body actually functions better. Who knew? For anyone going through something similar, you're not obligated to accept poor treatment just because someone shares your DNA. Family is supposed to be a safe place, and if it's not, it's okay to build your own safe place elsewhere. That's exactly what I did, and I've never been happier.